Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Teams Overview webinar. My name is Juan Cuellar, and I will be your presenter. Now, this webinar is sponsored by NSCA. Now, I'd like to provide you with a little background information about us before we jump in. Established in 1984, OfficePro has over 30 years of experience specializing in professional services and has trained over 1 million professionals globally, partnering with industry-leading companies such as Microsoft, CompTIA, Crestron, PeopleCert, and Pearson VUE, just to name a few. OfficePro provides training, end user adoption programs, certification prep, and test center services on a wide variety of disciplines such as software, information technology, soft skills, professional audio video services, as well as collaboration. OfficePro also offers workforce solution services through staffing and recruiting for short term and long term information technology, help desk, administration, analysts, business process initiatives, human resources, and security personnel. All right, enough about us. Let's go ahead and jump into today's webinar. Now, with Microsoft Teams becoming a staple in the work or enterprise environment, it's a good idea to have a basic understanding of what it is and what are the core functionalities. Now, to do so, let's start off by discussing exactly what is Microsoft Teams. Well, Microsoft Teams is a platform that serves as the central hub for all communication, all collaboration, and all work. Now, when it comes to Teams, essentially it's a cloud-based application, but it does come in different flavors that can support you regardless of your current circumstance. So let's take a look at what this means. Now, Teams lives in the cloud. And what this means is that regardless of your current circumstance, let's say you're working on your standard work computer, or maybe in a different office, or maybe you're borrowing a colleague's computer, maybe you're working from a laptop, or you're working on the go from a tablet or a mobile phone. Regardless of what your situation is, you'll always be able to access your team resources as long as you have internet access. As long as the device you're working from has internet access, you'll be good to go. Now, if, let's say, you're on your standard work computer, you'll most likely have the Teams desktop application installed, which is what we will be focusing on today, as it does give you the most robust functionality. But what if that's not where you're working from? Maybe you're in a different office or borrowing somebody's computer, or maybe on your personal laptop and you need to access some of the resources that you have in Teams. Well, the other option is the Teams web app. Much like a lot of the other apps and services that we get through Microsoft 365, it has an online version of it, and we'll take a look at that a little later today as well. But what if you're on the go? What if you're traveling from one location to another, or maybe you're just, going from your office to a meeting? Well, we also have the Teams mobile app as well. And the nice thing is that, again, for the most part, the experience is almost identical, and you'll have most of the functionality regardless of which one of these iterations or versions you're using. Now, let's talk about some of the basics in the app. So let me go ahead and open up the Teams application. As you can see, I have Teams open already. And let's take a look at the interface real quickly. Across the top, you'll have the window handle or the title bar. It's just this purple handle. You'll have a search across the top. You'll have the back and forward arrows on the top left, and those work just like the back and forward arrows in your browser. They allow you to navigate back and forth between the different pages you've been at. But on the top right, you'll have the three basic window controls. You'll have the X to close the app, the maximize or restore, the minimize, but then you have your profile menu. And this can come in handy for several reasons. Notice that under your profile menu, you can see the account that you're using, but you also see your status. Now, the status allows your colleagues to see what your current status is. And you'll notice if I click where mine currently says available, I have various status to choose from available, busy, do not disturb, be right back, or appear offline. And I can choose whichever status I want to appear as. So notice when I selected busy, the little icon next to my profile picture changed to red. If I want to appear away, there it goes. But Teams does have the ability to recognize what your current status is, and it'll update this for you as well. So for example, let's say that you are logged in and just available. The moment you join a meeting, it'll switch your status to busy. Now, if you are in the meeting and you're presenting, it'll switch your status to do not disturb. And the purpose of that is so that you won't get any pop-up notifications through Teams while you're presenting and interrupt the meeting. Now, the moment you hang up from the meeting, it'll switch you back to available. If you walk away from your computer, it'll switch you to be right back. The moment you wake up your computer, it'll switch you back to available. So again, it does have the ability to set whatever status you need. But let's say that I'm going to be busy in a meeting for about an hour. If you manually set it, it'll stay that status until you set it to something else. But the nice thing is I can set the duration after which it can reset automatically. So I can select what status I want it to set to, and I can have it reset after the specified amount of time. So I'll just set it for an hour. I can click done, and you'll see that my status has changed to red, indicating that I'm busy. But what if I also want to provide my colleagues a little message? Going back to the profile menu, right next to the status, there's also a set status message. And you can type in whatever message you want here. For example, I can say something like, I will be in a meeting for the next hour. Now, the nice thing about this is if maybe you want to refer people to someone else who can help them in the meanwhile that you're not available, you can tag people as well. So I can put something like, please contact, and now I can use the @ symbol and start typing my colleague's name. So I'm going to type in Phoebe. So I can select my colleague's name, contact Phoebe for immediate assistance. Now, just like the status, I can have it reset after a specified amount of time and then click done. And that's it. So again, the nice thing is that you can keep your colleagues up to date, whether you're free, available, you're away, or you're presenting, so they know when they can contact you during the day or throughout the day. Now, down the left-hand side, we have the apps pane. I consider this the main navigation. And by default, you should have these 6 icons, even though they will vary, and you'll see why in just a bit. You should have activity where you'll see some notifications. You'll have chat, Teams, calendar, calls, and files. But remember how I said that Teams is the central hub for all work, communication, and collaboration? And while Teams does have the core functionality here, it does have the ability to integrate with other apps and other services. And you do that by enabling additional apps within the Teams environment. Now, you can click on this ellipsis at the bottom of the navigation pane, and it'll offer you a couple of apps that are available here. But if you want to see all of them, you can click More Apps, and this will show you all of the apps that are available for your organization. And there are tons to choose from. Now, if you're looking for one in specific, let's say I want to add the tasks, I can search for it up here. And notice it pulls up some search results. Here's tasks by planner and to do. I can select it. It gives me some basic information. Click open. And notice it added that to my navigation pane here. I will say though that when you initially open a new app, it's there just temporarily. If you want to keep that icon there for future use, you can right click and pin it so that even once you move away from that app, it'll remain there for future use. All right. Now, that is the basics on getting familiar with the Teams application. Now let's jump into some of the core functionality. Now, one of the most common features is called the chat. And the chat allows you to conduct your day-to-day communication. The idea behind this is that you will hopefully replace other methods of communication with this feature here. So for example, if in the past you needed to communicate some information or ask a basic question, and maybe you would have gone to Outlook, write up a whole email and wait for them to respond, or maybe you walked across the building to your colleague's cubicle or office, or maybe you picked up the phone. Well, now we can replace all of those methods of the day-to-day communication with this chat feature. So let's take a look. Let me go back to Teams here. Now, down the left-hand side, you'll notice that the second icon is called Chat. And similar to the text message application on your mobile device, the first thing you see is a list of recent conversations you've had. Notice I've had a recent conversation with Phoebe. Now remember, I set her as the person to contact in my absence. So notice it did automatically send her a message letting her know that I had mentioned her in my status, and it even quoted the status so she knows what I mentioned about her. But I can see that I have older conversations here. So the nice thing is about Teams is that it's considered a perpetual chat application, meaning that you'll always be able to go back to the conversation history and see what was previously discussed. But if I want to start a new chat, across the top, I can click on the new chat button and it asks, who do you want to reach out to? Let's say I want to reach out to my colleague Dwight. So I'm going to type in his name, click on it, and here it is. Now, across the bottom of this new chat, I can see the type a message window. So now instead of writing up a whole email, instead of picking up the phone or walking across the building to his office, I can now send him a quick little message here. So I'm going to just ask him very quickly, will you be at the meeting next week? Now, once I'm ready, I can press enter or click the send icon. Now, of course, this will pop up on Dwight's end, and if he sees it, he can respond to it. Now, I happen to have Dwight logged in the browser application here. So notice from Dwight's end, he has a couple of notifications through the activity button, and notice it says here that, and actually under the chat here, let me go. There it goes. So notice I see the new chat and he can see where Sheldon asked him if he's going to be at the meeting. Now, he sees it, so he's going to respond. Yes, I will be there. And then he can respond there. Now notice Sheldon just got a notification on the bottom with that new chat. And Sheldon can respond from this little window. He can click reply and he can reply, great. Did you get a chance to finalize the presentation? And notice I pressed enter. It sent that right away. And then let's say Dwight is going to respond, yes, it's good to go. And again, I'm going to see the message. And if I want to open up the whole chat conversation, I can click on it. Notice it takes me to it. Now, besides just the regular text messages, there are several ways to communicate. I could point to a message and react to it, similar to reacting to a post in LinkedIn or Facebook. I can give it a thumbs up. But notice that below the text message, there are tons of tools. And sometimes you may want to communicate in a little bit more of a dynamic way. So you can include emojis or emoticons, animated GIFs, and even stickers. So let's say I want to use a GIF, animated GIF. Now, there are some featured GIFs right off the bat, but you can search for whatever you're trying to express. So I'm going to just search for great. And notice there are tons of options to choose from, right? So you find one you like, and then you can send it off. So as you can see, it makes it super easy to communicate with your colleagues through this chat capability. But what about if you need to communicate with a group of people? Let's say last week I sent out a budget and I'm curious if they got a chance to review it. Well, just like creating this one-on-one chat, I can click the new chat, and I still need to include Dwight, so I'm going to type in his name, but I also need to include my colleague Phoebe. So notice I am not limited just to one person. I can include up to, believe it or not, 300 people in these group chats. But now what I can do is I can type my message to this group of colleagues, and I'm going to ask, did you all get a chance to review the budget I sent last week? Now, notice spell check works. Gotta love that spell check, right? It ensures that you don't have any typos before you send it off. Then you can send it. Now, of course, this message is going to be sent to the entire group, and each person can respond accordingly. Now, let's say Dwight, he got a chance to review it and it looks good. So he's going to say, yes, it looks great. Now, one thing you'll notice is that as your colleagues are responding, you can see that they're actively responding because it'll tell you when they're typing. This is extremely helpful when you need a quick response. And you can see that Dwight got it and it looks good. But let's say Phoebe, for some reason, she never got it. So if she responds to that, okay. And so notice we're now having this group conversation. I can give Dwight's message a thumbs up. I can point to Phoebe's and just be surprised because I thought I sent it to her. Now, when you are in a group conversation, there are some additional features that you can use as well. Now, a lot of times you'll have a really long conversation, and there are times where you may want to reply to a specific message. Now, check this out. If I want to reply to this specific message, in this case, it's probably not necessary, but it can come in handy in some cases. I can point to the message, click on the little ellipsis, and notice click reply. And what it does is that it mentions that message along with whatever I'm going to write. Now, another feature is the at mentions, especially when you're in a group environment. If you want to address or mention a specific person, remember those at symbols, or I can type in at Phoebe. I thought I sent it to you as well. I will resend later today. That way, not only Phoebe knows that I'm talking to her, everybody else can see that I'm talking directly to her, but I'm also including what message I'm replying to that can come in handy so that there's no confusion. And then when I click send, there it goes. So again, this is the chat. You can have one-on-one chats, you can have group chats. But again, it's a great way to conduct your day-to-day communication. All right, let's move on. Now, this next feature is kind of like the cornerstone of Microsoft Teams. The next feature is the Teams feature. Now, the Teams feature is specifically for collaboration. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Juan, didn't you just collaborate with Dwight and Phoebe? Yes, but this Teams feature brings a lot more functionality to the table. So let's take a look at what that means. Now, in Microsoft 365, we have tons of apps and services. We have Exchange, we have SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, Office, OneDrive, Planner, Stream, Forms, Yammer, List, Power BI, and of course the list goes on and on and on. But there is a specific feature that not too many people are inherently familiar with, and this is called Microsoft 365 groups. Now, these Microsoft 365 groups are a collaborative environment for groups of people that are working together to collaborate, or if you will, for different teams of people to collaborate. And what these groups do is that they draw resources from all of these other services and apps for the collaboration of that group or team. So when you're working with a team within Microsoft Teams, yes, you do have teams there, but that's just a subset of a bigger feature called Microsoft 365 groups. And it's good to know that that team automatically gets a corresponding SharePoint site. It includes a shared mailbox, and it could include resources from all of these other apps and services. So again, sometimes it's good to take a step back, look at the big picture so you know how everything integrates together. So now that we have an understanding of what a team is in Microsoft Teams, again, it's just a subset of a bigger feature that could include other resources for the collaboration of different groups or teams. Let's talk about that. Now, a team can be created anytime a group of people are working together. So it might be for a department, an office, a division, or maybe for a project. So let's see how that works. Now, I will say that the first thing you need to know is you can go down the left and click on Teams, and you'll notice that I'm already a member of these two teams. I'm a member of the Human Resources team and a member of the Training team. Now, I will mention that the creation of new teams, as we saw, it's not only going to create a team, but it's actually going to create that overall Microsoft 365 group. Now, it tends to do that in the background. From Teams, you'll only, for the most part, see the Teams portion of it. But because it creates that collaborative environment, I will say that some organizations do choose to restrict the creation of those only to IT so that they can manage that. So in some organizations, they may allow it. In other organizations, they may choose to restrict that. But if your organization does allow you to create new teams, you'll notice across the bottom, once you're in the Teams section of Microsoft Teams, across the bottom, you'll see the option to join or create a team. Now, you may see public teams that you can join, or if you have your IT gives you the ability to, you can create a new team. Now, let's say I just got assigned to a new project where I need to manage a conference coming up in the fall. So I can click create a team to have a central place to collaborate with the colleagues that are going to help me with that. Now, you can create a team from scratch. You can create a team from an existing Microsoft 365 group if it already was created using some other method, or you can create a new team from one of the templates that Microsoft Teams provides. But I'm going to create one from scratch. So I'm going to click from scratch. Now it's going to ask, should it be a private team or a public team? Now, what's the difference? Well, a public team is open for anyone in your organization to choose to join. However, a private team, you can manage who can join. So you as a creator will automatically become an owner, and you can manage the team, and then you'll also be able to decide who can join as part of that team. So I'm going to create a private team. Now it's going to ask you, what do you want to call it? I'll call it Fall Conference, and we hold this yearly, so I'm going to put in here 2022. You can provide a description so people know what the team is for. I'm just going to go ahead and click Create. Give that a minute, and just like that, I've created a brand new team. Now, notice how it's giving me the opportunity to start adding some of my colleagues who are going to collaborate with me here. So I definitely want to add Dwight. I'm going to add Phoebe. I'm going to add Penny, Leonard, and let's say Ross and Rachel. So again, you can start adding all the team members that are going to collaborate with you now, or you can add more later. I'm going to go ahead and click Add. Now, when you add team members, they're going to be added as members to the team. But if one of these colleagues is going to help you manage the team, you can change them from a member to an owner, which will allow them to also manage the team along with you. Once you're finished, you click Close, and you can see right off the bat, there is my brand new team. Now, what is a team composed of? Well, a team is composed of what we call channels. Now, every team will get the default general channel. But for example, under human resources, notice that if I expand it, I see the general channel, but we also see a channel for benefits, a channel for corporate updates, events, job opportunities, onboarding, payroll, recruitment. Under the training team, notice we see new course ideas, outlines, registration, virtual programs. So these channels allow you to have conversations on different aspects of your team or different topics of conversation without having them all mixed together. So as I'm thinking about my fall conference, what are the different topics that we're going to need to keep track of? Or different topics of conversation that we're going to need to have? Well, I know we're going to need to have conversations regarding the budget. So I can click on the ellipsis next to the team to add a new channel, and I'm going to call it Budget. Then I can click Add, and just like that, I have a new channel. And I can repeat that process for as many channels as I need. Now, we will also need to discuss registrations as well as the venue for that conference. Now, any team member by default can add these channels so that we can have different conversations on different topics. But once you have the channels, now we can start communicating and collaborating. So for example, I like to add a little welcome under the general channel, especially for new teams. So now I can go to the welcome channel, click across the bottom where it says new conversation, and it lets me start typing. Now, I can start a new standard conversation, but there's a nice little added feature here called announcements that help this post stand out. So let's take a look at that. If I click this first button that allows me to format, I can change it from a new conversation to a new announcement. And all that really does is that it adds this banner. And I'm just going to type in here, welcome to Fall Conference. I can also customize the background. I can change the color, or I can upload my own graphic to use as the background. I'm going to use this atrium. It shows me. I can reposition it wherever I'd like it to show. Click Done. And there it is. Now, That's the announcement header, but what is the announcement about? So I'm going to put in here, what is this team for? And then in the subject or in the content, I'm going to say, we will use this team to coordinate all areas of the fall conference. Please feel free to add more channels as needed. Now, once I'm ready, I can click the send and it posts that announcement. Now, just in that same method, I can go throughout the different channels and start communicating. For example, under the registrations, maybe I have a question for my team and I need to ask, when is the registration form going to be ready? So I'm going to click new conversation. Now, in this case, not everything needs to be an announcement, only when things really need to stick out. In this one, I'm just going to leave it as a regular conversation. So I'm going to type in here, when will the registration form be ready? So notice, and again, spell check works. I can send it, and now everybody in my team will see that new post and we'll be able to collaborate together. And under the venue, I can ask for suggestions. Does anyone have any suggestions as to where we can host the conference? And there it goes. Now, the great part about this is that we can actually share files as well. So watch this. If I want to share the budget, I can go to the budget channel, since we have a specific channel for that. I'm going to start a new conversation. I'm going to say, here are the latest numbers. And I'm going to attach the spreadsheet that I've been working on. I'm going to click on the attach icon, give it a second or so. It lets me select where I want to attach it from. I'm going to attach it from my OneDrive. Now notice it's going to let me see all the folders and files in my OneDrive. And let's see, under my financial folder, here's the budget that I've been working on. Now notice I have two options. I could upload a copy of this file for the team to work on, or I can share a link so that my users can access the file in my OneDrive. So which one you use really depends on the situation. Let's say that in this case, I actually don't want multiple copies of the budget floating around, but I do need to give my team access to the numbers, so I'm going to just share a link. Now, when I share a link, notice that it lets me choose what permissions I want to give them. This is relatively a new feature, where it says people in your organization with this link can edit. But what if I don't want them to edit? I just want them to have read-only access. Well, I can click on the drop-down and change all aspects of the permissions for this link. I'm going to select only people in the fall conference team, and I don't want to allow them to edit. Now, notice that by default, it'll allow them to download their own copy. But again, if I want to restrict that, I can prevent that as well. So now I can click apply. And now it says only people in this team with this link can view. So once I'm ready, click send, and there it is. Now I also have the agenda for this file, or for this project. So let me post that in the general. I'm going to start a new conversation. I'm going to say, here is the draft agenda. Please feel free to add any suggestions. Now I'm going to attach a file, and in this case, I'm going to attach it from my desktop. I'm going to upload a file from my desktop, and here's the agenda for the conference. I'm going to click open. Now, because I'm grabbing it from my desktop, it cannot share it from there. So what it did in this case is that it's actually uploading a copy of that file from my desktop into that team. And you'll see what I mean in just a little bit. So once I'm ready, I can send it off, and there it goes. So there you go, guys. That is a quick little overview of the Teams feature in Microsoft Teams. Now, we'll come back to this and see how it all integrates with other areas, but let's keep it going. Now, another aspect is meetings, team meetings. Now, team meetings allows us to conduct online meetings similar to the platform that we're on right now. We can conduct online meetings, webinars, events, presentations. So let's take a look at how that works. Now, in Microsoft Teams, down the left-hand side, you'll notice there is a calendar icon. Now, the first thing to recognize is that this calendar icon provides you with the exact same schedule that you see in Outlook. It's just now two different places to access your same schedule. So this is your schedule. Now, let's say that this Friday, tomorrow, I want to schedule an all-staff meeting. So what I can do is from the calendar, I can click on the button up here that says New Meeting. And notice it provides me with all of the information. I'm going to call it Staff Meeting. It asks, who do I want to invite? So I'm going to type in here, Dwight. I'm going to add Phoebe. I'll also add Ross and Rachel. Now I can select the date and time. Now here's the interesting part. Once I added these colleagues, notice that it tells me their status right below it for the currently selected date and time. But as I update this, it'll show me who is available, who is free, or who has something tentatively on their calendar. I'm going to change this to, let's say 10 to 11. And there it goes. I can make it repeat. I can add a channel, which we'll see next. I can add a location, but for the most part, these team meetings are designed to be online meetings. But if you need to have like a hybrid meeting, if you need to, for example, reserve a conference room and have some people in person and some remote attendees, you can do so as well. Below here, you can add all of the details. So for example, I can say, please have your status updates ready. Once I'm ready, I can click send, and you'll notice, oh, I just noticed I scheduled on the wrong day. Look at that. So the nice thing is you can always double click on it and change whatever information you need, okay? So you can always go back and change the information. I'm going to change it to Friday. Now, of course, for the invitees, they're going to get these through an email invitation through Outlook. All right. Now, let me schedule another meeting. Let's say for later today, I need to schedule a budget review. This was kind of a last minute meeting, budget review. And in this meeting, I only need my colleague Dwight and Phoebe. Now, this is the budget review for the fall conference. And we'll leave this for today at 1. Now, here's the interesting part. The previous meeting was just a general staff meeting. But this meeting here is actually related to one of the teams and channels that I have. So one of the options that we have is to associate a meeting with that team channel. Notice here where it says add a channel, it shows me a list of all the teams, and here's my fall conference that I just created a couple of minutes ago. I can select what channel this meeting is related to, and there it is. Now, please note that the moment you schedule this, that is no longer editable. So just think through it, make sure you've associated to the right team and channel if you even need one in the first place. And I'm going to type in here, please bring all your latest expenses, right? So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and click send, and you can see that it's scheduling it. Now, once you schedule a meeting, you can go back to that meeting and change different aspects of that meeting. Now, you do that by double-clicking the meeting, and you'll notice that across the top, there's a button that says Meeting Options. Now, these options will open up through the browser. And depending on the scenario of the meeting, sometimes it might be more of a presentation, other times it might be more of a collaborative environment. So you can go through and change different options. So for example, you can choose who needs to stay in the lobby versus who can bypass the lobby. You can choose if you want there to be a co-organizer. Sometimes you're scheduling a meeting that you won't be available for, so you may want to assign a new organizer so that they can manage it. You may want to decide who is a presenter, if you want to allow people to unmute themselves or turn on their cameras, do you want the meeting to automatically record, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of options that you can choose from. And of course, which options you choose really depends on the scenario of each meeting. Now, let's go back to this meeting that I related or associated with that team and channel. Let me show you this. If I go back to Teams and go back to the budget channel, notice that when you associate a meeting with a channel, it actually posts that meeting there. And the nice thing about that is that this meeting is now available for the whole team to join. Even though I invited specifically Dwight and Phoebe, because I associated with it, anybody that has access to the team and that channel, they'll be able to opt in if needed. All right. Now let's take a look at how to join a meeting. Now for this, I'm going to turn off my webcam here because I want to show you how Teams utilizes it. So whenever you're ready to join a meeting, one way you can do so is to go back to your calendar and click the meeting. Now, once it's time for the meeting, you'll actually see a join button right there. But if you want to join a little early, you can select it and click join. Now you'll notice that it opens up the join window from here. And it asks for your preferences. One, it asks if you want to join with your camera on. If you do, you can switch the camera on, and it gives you a nice little preview. Now, notice that I have what's called a virtual background applied. But if I want to change it, if I want to remove it, or if I want to use something else, I can click background filters. Now, let's say I don't want to use a background, I can just turn it off. I may just want to blur my background for a little bit more privacy. I may want to apply one of the virtual backgrounds that's provided by Microsoft. Or notice right across the top, you can click Add New. You can select whatever image you want to use, and that will now be available for you at the bottom of the list. And that was the one that you saw initially for me. Now, once you've selected your video and background options, you have different audio options. Do you want to use your computer audio, your phone, room, whatever audio you whatever, or do you not want to join audio? Now, you can customize the configurations from here as well. So you can change what speaker it's going to use, what microphone it's going to use. Now, one little tidbit that I like to use is because sometimes you may be joining a meeting that already started and you don't want your audio to interrupt. So what I like to do is I like to join the meeting muted. And then if I do need to speak into the meeting, I can unmute myself whenever I'm ready. Then I can click join now. And it's going to connect me to that meeting. All right. Now, I'm the only one in the meeting thus far, but I want to show you a couple of little features here. You'll notice that across the top, we have the main toolbar. Right now, it's recognizing that I'm muted, so it's telling me that I can hold the space bar if I want to unmute myself, or I can just click the button. Now, the first button is the people, and this will show you who is in the meeting, who was invited, and notice that it actually gives you suggestions as well. And these are all the other team members to the team that you associated this meeting with. Now, I'm sure we've all had the situation where we're in a meeting and we're kind of twiddling our thumbs, waiting to see if somebody's going to join. But now, if I want to remind Dwight that, hey, we're waiting for you in this meeting, I can point to his name here and click Request to Join. And what that'll do is that'll allow Dwight to join from his end. So it'll give him a little ring on his end. All right, and let's see here. And I am joining through the web. And you can see that he is connecting, and there he is. Okay, and let's say that Phoebe, we're going to have Phoebe join as well, so we're going to add her. So we'll give her a second or two to join. Okay, so you can see that now we have a group of people here. And of course, as the organizer, I can manage my members here. I can invite new people or add any suggestions. Through a meeting, we have the standard chat. So if we need to, for example, share any information, share a link, or ask a question, we can all post this information here. So I'm going to say, when is the final budget due? I can post that in there, and everybody will be notified that there is a message there, and anybody can respond to that, or they can unmute themselves, because I haven't prevented them from unmuting themselves. So let's say Phoebe is going to let me know that, hey, the budget is due this Friday. Now, remember all of that chat functionality that we saw earlier for the day-to-day communications? Well, all of that is available here as well. All of the functionality, like reactions, animated GIFs, attachments. So if we're talking about the budget and I want to be a little silly, I can search for something about the budget, search for a GIF related to the budget. And, we can post those there. And again, we can communicate that way. There are also reactions. So as the speaker is speaking, we can react with various reactions. We can raise our hand to grab the speaker's attention. There's all sorts of helpful features here. But you'll notice that here we also have the core functionality. We have the camera. Right now you can see my video on the bottom right, but if I want to turn my camera off, I just click on it. I can mute or unmute myself with this mic. Now, probably one of the more important options is being able to present. So let's say that I'm going to open up the budget that I have that I'm working with. And let's get that open here. Maybe I want to present that so we can discuss that in the meeting. And here's the budget window, right? Now, when you present in Teams, you'll have a lot of options to choose from. Now that I have the window open, I can click the Share button. And you'll notice that it'll let me share an entire screen or a specific window that I have open, or a whiteboard, content from camera, or I can even upload a presentation. But in this case, what I can do is I can select the window, I can look for the window that I have open, and notice how it pulls it up. And notice how there's this red border around the Excel window indicating that that is what I'm currently sharing. Now, once I'm finished sharing, you'll notice that the meeting window got minimized on the bottom right. I can stop sharing by clicking this little stop button. It pulls the meeting window back up, and there we go. Now, I just want to add that there are a ton of more options, and I'm going to highlight the More button here. Notice that when you go to More, there are going to be tons of options here. So remember the meeting settings or options? Well, if once you're in a meeting, you need to change some of that, you can go to the meeting options. You can create meeting notes that's going to be shared with the whole team. You can pull up the meeting information. There's a lot of options here, but one that I know is very popular is the meeting recording. Now, when I click meeting recording, for privacy reasons, it's going to let everyone know that the meeting is started. But notice that the moment I started recording my meeting, it is also going to transcribe anything that is said. So that's a helpful little feature. So not only will you have the recording, so any content, or if anybody turns on their video again, we'll be able to watch that again, but we'll also have the transcript of the meeting so we can see what was said, what was mentioned, what people's opinions were. So that can come in quite handy as well. All right, to wrap up the meetings, anyone can leave the meeting at any moment, but as the organizer, if I want to ensure that this meeting is going to be wrapped up for everyone, I can click the little down arrow and select End Meeting. Now notice this will confirm that, hey, are you sure you want to end the meeting for everyone? So I'm going to confirm that by clicking End. And then the meeting will be wrapped up on everyone's end, and we're going to be all good to go. Now, one of the nice things about meetings in Teams is that all of the resources generated during a meeting are going to be available after the meeting. Now, in a meeting like the staff meeting where I did not associate it to a team or channel, you'll notice that in your chat, you're going to have meeting chats here. So any chat with a purple icon, those are the conversations and the resources that were generated during a particular meeting. You see that? Now, again, these are for meetings that were not associated to a particular team or channel. But what about for the meetings that were associated to a team or channel? Well, you can access those resources from that team and that channel. Remember where it posted the meeting? Well, all of the information, whether it was the meeting chats or the recordings or transcripts or notes, notice that as that post still resides in that meeting channel, we can see all the replies, and all that information is available for either the attendees to review after or any other team member to review even if they missed the meeting. That also includes the recording as well. So again, that is a super helpful feature for team meetings. All right, with just a couple of minutes left, let's go ahead and wrap up with the files functionality. Now in Teams, you can access files from two different resources. One, you can access files from your OneDrive, so in other words, your files, or from a team, from files that have been shared in a team. So let's take a look at how that works. If I go back to Teams, remember we mentioned that Teams is a central hub for all work, communication, and collaboration. Well, your files are accessible from the Files button. Now, from the Files button, you'll see all the files you've recently worked with, including the recording of that meeting I just got off of, any attendance reports, or any other files that you've recently worked with. But if you want to see files that you've recently worked with in Teams, in your different teams, we can click Teams here. Now again, there's the recording for that meeting. Remember I shared that agenda for conference in the fall conference team, so you can see that there, and any other files in Teams. Or if you're simply trying to access the files from your OneDrive, here is the link. And again, this will give you a list of all the folders from which you can access the files. You can open the files. Notice that you can open those files right here from within Teams. Let me go ahead and close that file from here for now. And I can make any changes I need. So for example, if we got some new expenses for the food, I can add those expenses here, and we're gonna add 22,000. It's now up to 22,000. We can do all sorts of information. We can highlight it. And again, all of these edits are saved live. Now, the nice thing about this is you can get in, make your changes, close it, and you're done. But sometimes editing files through the Teams interface may provide some challenges or some limitations. Because while these are great for getting in, getting out, getting your job done quickly, sometimes you may need some more robust functionality. So if you open up a file from Teams and need the full capabilities of that app, notice that we have the button that says Open in Desktop App. So when I do so, it launches the appropriate application. Notice here it is, and I can just pick up where we left off. I can change whatever numbers we need and go from there. Now again, these changes are being saved automatically, so I can close it. And if I need to, I can resume here. Notice it refreshes it to show me all the latest updates. And there it goes. But I'm going to go ahead and close it for now. And there you go, guys. That is Microsoft Teams. Now, again, we've covered a lot of information. We mentioned that Teams is a central hub for all work, all communication, and all collaboration, where we can conduct our day-to-day communication. We can collaborate in the various teams that we're a member of. We can meet online and access all the files that we need to get all of our work done in one central place. Now, in wrapping up, just want to mention that if any of you are interested in any additional training or additional services, or any of our other services such as recruiting services or professional audio video or exam proctoring or training on any other area, you are more than welcome to contact us or contact our Vice President of Client Engagement, Beth Chernoff. We would be happy to help you in whatever way we can. Now, we're going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you're welcome to go ahead and post them in the meeting chat. All right. Now, I see a question that says, how many people can be added to an online meeting? Now, an online meeting can contain up to 10,000 members. Now, it's interesting because it offers the full functionality for the first 1,000 attendees, meaning the chat and interactions and all of that other functionality. But if you need a meeting that surpasses that 1,000 threshold, it can support up to 10,000, but all of the participants that join the meeting after that 1,000 will be view only. They will not have the ability to chat or present or add reactions. So that is how many you can join. All right. Can you share and still see the participants? That's a great question. So when you are in a Teams meeting, depending on how you share will affect how you can still see the participants. So first of all, I always recommend that when you are joining an online meeting, if possible, have at least 2 different monitors available, especially if you're going to be presenting. That way you can present from one monitor and have your meeting window open in the second monitor. That will allow you to still be able to see your participants. Now, if you remember, there was an option to upload a PowerPoint into the meeting. Now, if you upload a PowerPoint, it's going to use what they call the PowerPoint Live functionality. And when you use that option, it does let you see your presentation as you're sharing it, along with all your participants all in one window. Now, another question, And let's see here. Another question says, can anyone see the documents under files? Well, they can, it all depends, right? So let's go back to files here. So first of all of the files under your OneDrive by default are private just for you. Notice that most of these folders are listed for me as private, except for this folder here, class documents. Notice this one is listed as shared. So any file in your OneDrive is private just for you unless you've specifically chosen to share that file. Okay, now let me add this. I'm going to open up financial documents that the folder is listed as private, but if I open it up, notice charges for supplies, that's private, but budget is listed as shared. That's because if you remember, I shared this budget in the fall conference team, and I shared a link to this file rather than uploading a duplicate copy. So again, if you've chosen a file from your OneDrive to share, yes, others will be able to access that. Now, let's talk about the files listed under Teams. Now remember, any files listed under Teams are in the teams. And if you remember, these teams have a corresponding SharePoint site. So the files in Teams, they no longer, quote unquote, belong to you, but they belong to the overall team. So let me give you an example. If you remember, under the general channel, I shared the fall conference. So all team members will be able to access the agenda for the fall conference from the post, or they can see all the files that have been shared in that channel from the Files tab. Give that a second. So notice there it is. Or we can choose to open these files in SharePoint. Because remember, while we can access and share files from the Teams interface, these files actually reside in the SharePoint, in the associated SharePoint site itself. Let me give you a good example. For my training team, under General, you can see that if I go to the Files tab, there are several files there. Under Outlines, there are multiple files here. And even under Registrations, there is a spreadsheet here. Now again, even though my entire team, all my members of my team can access the files from here, these files actually reside in that team's corresponding SharePoint site. I know that because if I click on the ellipsis, let me close this pop-up here. If I click on the ellipsis and tell it to open in SharePoint, notice it took me to that team's SharePoint site, to that SharePoint site's documents library, and that channel's folder. You see that? Now, if I go to the root of the document library, I'll see a folder for all the channels, such as General, and notice here are those files. If I go to Outlines, here they are. So again, any files shared in a team are available to everyone in that team. And what we just saw was, let's go back here. Let's see here. So what we just saw was that even though I was able to share and access files from the teams and the channels, the files that are shared there, because it's part of the group, it was hosted in that team's corresponding SharePoint site. All right. All right, let's see here. All right. Now I see a question that says, my team calls and meetings are embedded in the Teams app instead of being in a separate window. Do you know how to get the calls and meetings to be in a separate window? That's a good question. And it all depends on the installation that you may have. So one, are you using the web app? If you're using the web app, in other words, are you accessing Teams from a browser? When you join a meeting from a browser, it will probably use the same window. Now, if you are not using the web app and you are actually using the desktop application, I know that in in the earlier versions of the desktop applications, when you joined a meeting, it would actually join it in the default Teams window. And that was very inconvenient. So Microsoft, quite early on, they changed that so that when you join a meeting, it would join in a separate window so that you can have those two windows up simultaneously. You see that? So my recommendation, if yours is still joining from the default window, there are two options. One, I recommend that you have it checked for any updates. You can do so by going to the settings button or the settings menu on the top right, and there is an option for updates. Make sure you have the latest updates. Now, if you check for updates and it's still doing the same thing, what I would recommend is contacting your help desk and see if there is anything that they can push out to make sure you have the latest one ready and available. Okay? All right. It appears messages sent through team channels don't notify recipients. Can you cover how to do so? Yes. So when you are in Teams and then you're sending messages through channels, it doesn't send a notification to the whole team. Can you imagine? I'm already a member of these 3 teams, and I have about 10 channels, maybe 6 channels plus 4 channels, and then I'm going to have tons and tons of people posting information. You do not want to be bombarded with a cajillion notifications, right? Now, there are several things you can do. One, remember earlier, let's see where I posted that here. Let's see. Oh, remember earlier we spoke about mentions? So for example, if I want to make sure somebody gets notified of a post here, I can write a new post or I can click reply. And I'm going to post in here, please submit your latest can't spell, expenses to. Now check this out. Maybe I want to direct them to a specific person. I can type at and type in the person's name. Now, when I post something like this, it will notify whoever I mentioned. But if you want to make sure that everyone is notified, what you can also do is mention the name of the team. So I can start my message by saying at Fall Conference 2022, and then I can write my message. So now I'm addressing the whole team, and I'm going to say, hey team, please submit your latest expenses to Dwight. So because I'm mentioning the whole team, that is one way that I can ensure that the whole team is notified and is sent a notification about this post. Okay, and then when I click send, check this out. Right here, I'm logged in as Phoebe. Now, Phoebe was not specifically notified, but notice Phoebe got a notification, or Phoebe was not specifically mentioned, but notice Phoebe got a notification here, and it says that, hey, Sheldon mentioned the team, and it takes her directly to that message. So that's one way you can do so. That's how you can ensure that the whole team is notified about a post that you're posting. Now, here's the other aspect. Let's say that Sheldon, I am in charge of the budget for this project. And anytime anybody posts something under the budget channel, maybe I want to ensure that I am notified. Well, in that case, what I can do is I can change my notifications for that channel. I point to that channel, click the ellipsis, and then notice there's channel notifications, and I can change it to all activity. That way, whenever anybody posts anything, I can be notified. But again, that's up to each user to to create. Okay? All right. Now let's keep on going. We're getting a lot of good questions here. Is there a way to make recurring tasks, and how do the pop-up reminders work? Now, this tasks app that I added earlier, this is actually tasks by Planner and To Do. Now, Planner is just slightly outside of the scope for today's webinar. We don't have time to get into it, but I will say, and I've gotten this question over and over again. So first of all, Planner is for group collaboration or group task management. So it's great for when you're working in a team. But I've gotten the question, how do you make recurring tasks in Planner? Unfortunately, right now, that is not a possibility. You cannot create recurring tasks in Planner. Now, the Tasks app here also shows you your tasks from Outlook. So if you are managing your tasks in Outlook, you can access them from here as well. Now, in Outlook, you can make a recurring task. For example, this is a good example here. I have submit timesheet, of course, to get paid, right? Well, I need to get paid every 2 weeks. So let's say I'm submitting the timesheet for this paycheck. I mark it as complete. And in Outlook, it'll automatically recreate it for the next 2 weeks. Notice that now the date changed from the 5th to the 19th. So if you do need to make recurring tasks, I recommend you go through Outlook, create them there. Now, I will say this is just a little tidbit. Even though the tasks in Outlook are mainly for you to manage your own tasks, if you need to create recurring tasks for others, you actually can assign tasks from Outlook to others, and those can be recurring as well. So I recommend that you look into that solution, and once they're created, you can access those from the Tasks app here in Teams and going to the Tasks category so you can see what you have going on in Outlook. Okay? Very good question. So I see a question that says, I have an issue sometimes. When I set up a meeting for my boss, it does not allow him in. Other times, he is allowed in. Why is this happening? Well, if you are, let's call it a delegate for someone, those configurations need to be set up both in Outlook and in Teams. So in Outlook, you would need to be set up as a delegate for their account. And in Teams, you also would need to be set up as a delegate as well. To do so, you would go to the settings menu here, the ellipsis, and then go to settings. Now you would do this from your boss's computer. And let me recall, oh, here you go. So under settings, under the general category, if you scroll down, notice it says manage delegates. So under his computer, you'd be able to go to, you would be able to see who you're supporting, but then your boss would go to your delegates and add you here. All right. Now, once you're added here, like I mentioned, you'd also be needed to be added as a delegate in Outlook. And then when you go schedule a meeting, you would specify that this is a meeting on their behalf. Okay? All right. Can we set up team calls so we can see all videos on one monitor and data on a second monitor? If you're saying, well, yeah. So in a Teams meeting, when you share content, it shares it in the meeting window, and any window and any videos will be seen in the same window as a participant. Now, as a presenter, the only way you can present your content and see videos in the same window is to use the PowerPoint Live functionality. So let me go back here and see if I can join my meeting real quickly just to show you what I'm talking about. So when you're in a Teams meeting, and when you go to share, so sharing your screen, sharing a window, they will not allow you to see your content and any participant's video in the same window. However, if you share a whiteboard, I believe that will, but in particular, when you use the PowerPoint Live functionality that allows you to upload a PowerPoint into the meeting, it'll show you the presentation on the left and any participant's videos over on the right. Okay? All right. How do you remove yourself from a group? Well, you can go to the team and go to the team's name, click on the ellipsis. Now, here's the thing. Here's the option to leave the team. But if you are an owner of the team, you may not, and you are the only owner of the team, you may not be able to leave it because the team has to have an owner. Now, I see this option here because I also made Dwight the owner. But if you're just a member, you should be able to leave the team from that option. Can we change the ring sounds? Absolutely. From the settings button, you can go to settings. Now, there's different options. So for example, let's see here. Under notifications, now there are tons of different notifications, right? So you can change how you get notifications, and as you're going in and editing those, you'll be able to change what sounds it uses. But also down the left, if you go to calls, notice that you can change what ringtones it's using here. You can play them to get a preview. You have a couple of different options to choose from. So this is where you can change what ringtones are being used. All right, guys. Well, I believe those are all the questions. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Again, I'd like to thank you all for joining today. Really great questions. Again, if you'd like to contact us on any additional training or any of our other services, feel free to contact our Vice President of Client Engagement, Beth Chernoff. And again, thank you for joining. Have a great afternoon.